Salvete mihi nomen est, Stella, ad hoc est Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast, episode 240 for November MMXXIII. Batgirl the Oracle is brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out milehighcomics.com. Well, if you're like me, your temperatures may be fluctuating. At some point, they are down. At other point, they are up. Right now, it told me yesterday that it was going to plummet today, but when I went to the gym this morning, it was a balmy 50. So that's not plummeting to me. So here's hoping for my birthday, which is as of this recording in 3 days, and for the colonizers holiday, that it's actually chilly when I'm running that drumstick dash. So welcome for 240. It feels like we are still taking sighs of relief after being done with war games. And yet, when I looked at what was kind of next on the docket, I'm still kind of in war games, still in an epilogue, it seems. But before we get to that, I did want to, because I skipped over it and promised that this would happen. And my publicity stunt boyfriend, as I'm now calling him, Harry Geraldo, he was wondering when I was going to give a recap of my latest trip to T-Ticket, aka Falmouth. Now, this one was planned, right? Because the August one was not planned. And we had, in the course of many Wednesdays and sometimes Saturdays of playing video games, been discussing. I'm sharing my. Let's see here. No one cares about my show notes. Let's try this again. There we go. We had come up with many, many things that we were going to do. Some of them were joking and others were joking, but actually we're going to do it because it sounds very weird. Like, for instance, making cookies filled with beans. That was something we struck from the list because we just did not have enough time. So I will say that typically going from where I live in Virginia up to Providence, which is where Harry picks me up at the train station, is a 10-hour train ride. And I thought it would be nice to be able to split that up. And at the same time, I had been talking to Claire, and she was really interested in seeing Sweeney Todd with Josh Groban and Annalie Ashford. And I thought, I'm not like super, super, but then as I was thinking about it, I thought, actually, that would be, I've never seen Sweeney Todd. I like Josh Groban. I've always seen Annalie Ashford in the American Crime Story with Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. So I thought, oh, this will be interesting. So we got tickets for that. So I went up Thursday. So then that's just 6 hours. Saw the show that night, stayed with her in the Upper West Side. And then Friday morning had the last little chunk and had more of Friday also to hang out with Geraldo. I will say that the subway is fine, but I don't think it's ideal for people with like lots of luggage. And when I go up for like more days, I think like the girliest thing about me is that I overpack. But typically it like looks like I'm overpacking, but I actually use all of the outfits that I have planned and I pack by outfit basically. And then you also need to be cautious, like, well, if the weather changes, do I have a potential like cold weather, that sort of thing. So the suitcase was heavy, but not, it was definitely not over 50, I will say. It was enough to get on an airplane. But then I also had my satchel because I was working on school stuff, had a laptop, and I did not want that on my back and the suitcase. So I thought, okay, at the Amtrak station at Moynihan, I'm going to shove this in because what really it's going to add maybe a couple pounds. shove it in there, and then I'll just have one thing. It was harder to shove in than I imagined. And it actually, with that laptop, was heavier than I imagined. So I had to leave the station. Well, the station connects directly to the one line. So that was fine. But getting out of the one line, I had to go up 2 flights and it was rough. And someone went down, was like watching me struggle pulling this up. And he went down the wrong way. You couldn't get back into the station that way. So then he was like behind me, which is super frustrating. Then I'm rolling it along, and Claire had warned me she was in a walk up. And she's like, "Is that okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah. We'll do this." And I get there and I ask, "How many floors is your walk up?" And it's 3. And I said, "Okay." So she did not tell me that. And I thought, this is fine, but I am removing this laptop now. And it took a little bit. A neighbor came out to see what all the racket was about, and I apologized because I just had to go a step at a time. But boy, howdy, was that it was like a good cross training of going up. Going down is easier, but again, step at a time. But I think next time if I were to visit her, I probably would just bring like a duffel, but that was just because I was on my way somewhere else. So I meet Harry, and as you can see, this T-ticket itinerary subject to change. Some of these things did change. We didn't necessarily edit them. Pick up, and we were just kind of hanging out. Picked up the race bib, as you can see. We got rid of a lot of stuff. So we went to Michael's because there's this weird thing that I wanted him to touch that was out for Halloween. I can't really properly describe it, but it's like this elongated ghost, and it has these short sort of phalange on it. And um it just felt really weird when I picked it up. And so I told everyone about it. And if we were near Michael's, I would bring someone in there so that they could touch it and feel as uncomfortable as I did. And I found one, luckily. And then we left. And then we went next door and shopped for orange soda because we were going to have an orange soda taste test challenge, which we'll talk about later. So we tried to get as many flavors of orange soda as we could. I don't think that we actually walked to the beach, and I don't know that not that day. We definitely went to the beach, but I will tell you about a betrayal that happened that time. And then we did watch Prometheus because you're going to do Prometheus and Covenant. Maybe it was Friday or maybe not, but I also want to go to bed early because I had to wake up at 5 for the race. So Saturday, the race, guess what? It's raining, which is nuts. It was raining last time. So it rained really hard right before, and then it petered out and it was just kind of like misting, and then it stopped for the race. So it really wasn't bad. Now, here is where something terrible, a knife to our relationship happened. And it is that I asked because there was an app that you could download and you could put in someone's bib number and then watch the progress. The mayor got the app. She got my bib number and she was following me. She even texted because she was at a water station for the marathoners, and it's like, "Congratulations," or "I'm watching you." So as we're waiting for the start, I asked Harry, are you going to track me? And he said yes. He said yes. Okay. There was no like he yes. It was a flat yes. After the race, I asked, what did it look like on that app? And he said, "Oh, I didn't track you." He flat out lied. He lied to my face about that. Now, to this day, he says that he was joking, but he did not give off the tone, the body language of someone joking about that. So I just thought that was serious. If I knew he was joking, I would have pressed him on it. But I thought, oh, well, he's tracking me. I'm so happy about that. Nope. So, anyways, we move on. Went to the pickle jar. I guess it was Saturday. And I guess we did do the orange soda challenge. We did not do night tennis. We played that on Sunday. And then throughout, I will also say that we were trying to beat River City Girls, and we did beat it. There were some frustrating times, but we did finally beat that. I was hopeful that being logged into my account that I would also reap the rewards of the trophies, but I haven't. So now I have to attempt to beat without him the one Habari that I've been stuck on for years now. And so pickle jar for lunch. I think we walked around the town, went to library. I forced him to get a library card. And then we decided to do the orange soda challenge, which you can actually see this video as well as a haircut video. I must have done the haircut on Saturday as well on our YouTube channel, Ludi at Pooknight. And apparently people really love the haircut video because there are 340 views. I don't know what's going on there. But the orange soda challenge, we took turns. We had 5 different types. We had Fanta, Crush, Sunkissed, Jarritos, and an off brand that was blood orange that came from the store that is regional to him, and I can't remember it. Shaw's question mark? I think that's what it's called. So we had cups, we labeled them by numbers and then pour them in, and also kept a record. So I went first. I got a 5 out of 5. I will say again, you can check the record. And then Harry went 2 out of 5. 2 out of 5. He was so confident he was going to get 100%. It was a poor showing. I think he just dove in too rapidly that after each taste, he just wanted to immediately say what the orange soda was, whereas I tasted and moved on and compared. It was very much like a wine challenge. That was in the evening. I will say that during the afternoon, because it started to rain again, I gave him a haircut. This was also a thing. He got a haircut. He gets haircuts. He doesn't like any of the haircuts that are given to him. So I said, why don't you just grow out your hair and I'll give you a haircut? There was no coercion involved. Again, you can check that record. And there are like low expectations from him and from me. Other people, I think, were getting some expectations because he was telling them and they thought I had some skill in hair cutting. I've never cut hair besides my own bangs, which is probably a bad decision. But, just checking in, like, hey, that this might be bad. He's like, yeah, that's fine. I decided at first I was going to give him like a really kind of edgy, I can't remember what it was called. It was an undercut, but it was like an over. I can't remember. And then I thought, you know what? Why don't we go for a mullet? And then I was going, I'm like, why don't an edgy mullet? And started to do it. It definitely harder than I imagined hair cutting. I never thought that it was an easy profession, but I definitely have more respect for it. It turned out okay. One side I think was a bit uneven, but then we went to an event later and people kept coming up to him and complimenting on his haircut, which at one point I said, Harry, how did all these people know about this haircut? But even a professional hair cutter told me that it was pretty good. So I just want to say right there. So you can again check to see what that is like. He hasn't gotten a haircut afterwards, so I don't know what a grown out mullet looks like, but definitely like the sides, probably that you can't even see the shaved anymore. And Sunday, I did really want to go to level 99, but we were going to do, was that Sunday? No. Sunday we played tennis. I can't remember if we did what other things we may have done. I think maybe a lot of River City girls. We may have gone to the beach on Sunday, unless that was on Monday. And but we didn't get to go to level 99. Oh, I think the reason why we didn't go to level 99 is because there's a family dinner. And then on Monday we couldn't because we are going to a cabaret, a birthday cabaret. And so I just get nervous when there's like a limit on time because I would have wanted it to be like completely open so that you don't have to rush because level 99 is an hour and a half and then 2 hour time slot at least to do the things and then go back. I mean, that's a significant amount of time. So some other time. And family dinner was fun. And then Monday, I did have an appointment on Zoom for class. I had to talk to Sydney or interview her. And then Cabaret, which was Harry's cousin's birthday. And that was great. And yeah, I was pretty wiped. And then, of course, Tuesday, leaving at 8:55 to go back, which was a whole thing because I think it was in Delaware that, well, the engine was acting up, so we couldn't go above 70 or something. And then they had to replace the engine. It was a whole thing. So, of course, just more more shenanigans for me. It always seems to happen. So the betrayal, of course, going to the beach is that I, like to look for ghost crabs or just crabs or any sort of wildlife. And we're walking along, and then we come back, and of course there are a lot of like horseshoe crab shells there, and I look at them, and we come back, and George, Harry's father, says, "Did you see any sea slugs?" And I mean, my thought is no, I didn't see any sea slugs. And Harry says, yes. And I thought to myself, where were you? Where was I? That there were sea slugs and I didn't get to see them. So I whipped around. I was like, where was this sea slug? And why didn't you point it out to me? And he says, I thought you saw it, which I think is one of the most foolish things that he could have said, because he knows, or he should know by now, that when I see something interesting, I usually go, ooh. And because I did not do that and run over and point at the sea slug, that means that I did not see it. So he's trying to make himself feel better with deniability, but there is none for him. So I'm pretty disappointed about that. And I think I blame the lack of sea slugs on the engine trouble that Amtrak encountered. And we do high lows, of course, in this family. And so basically anyone that I'm with. So I yeah, did highs, lows, and I can't remember what the low was that I picked, but Harry was even thinking like, I know what the low was. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what you're thinking. He said, you lied to me. I'm like, oh, right. Yeah, when you lied to me. So I forgot about it briefly, but don't worry. I wanted to tell you all in case you all have any sort of romantic ideas of who this hairy guy is, because people like Donovan seem to think he's this delicate wallflower that can do no wrong. But well, he lies and he betrays just like the rest of humanity. So there you go. Okay, well, we will move on to Find Your Joy segment. Shag's Mac and Cheese, Comfort and Joy. What's been giving me joy in these times? If you're a fan of the NWSL and you're a fan of maybe Karma, I think you'll be happy to know that New York, New Jersey, Gotham won the championship for the first time in club history. And this was great because Ali Krieger, this was their last year. That's my favorite player. And they had never gotten that far, and they just kept going and going and going. So it's like every game that she thought was her last game was not her last game. And then she gets to the final, and Megan Rapinoe with the OL Reign is on the other side, and Megan Rapinoe's retiring as well. So and they're great friends. So just an amazing time, and they won. And so, Allie's been having a time of it. Obviously, it's her retirement, so let's keep it positive. But her wife cheating on her, and then an impending divorce. So it's just like something's looking down upon. So that was certainly fun and a great game to watch. And then big news, people. If you recall, a thesis for me was due this semester. My final, my capstone thesis. I don't know if I talked about it, but a narrow margin of error in order to get a pass. 40 points total, 38 to 40, high pass. 32 to 38, either a pass or a pass with edits, and anything below that 32, you are on the margin of failing. You either have to make heavy edits in order to pass. You only get one chance to send it back in, or you will take the class again for 1 credit in the next semester. So I'm waiting. It was due on the 9th, I believe. And then we were told we were going to get results back by the 19th. No, wait, hold on. When was it due? Maybe the 7th. The 5th? Maybe this seems more likely. Yes, okay. It was due the 5th. The dates matter. I'll show you why. But the 5th, it was due. The 19th, I was getting my results. But then we get a message that said we were hoping to get your results back by the 9th. So now it's that Thursday. So what's happening? What's happening? Don't get results. Thursday passes. I don't get anything. Wake up Friday morning, open it up. Results are coming out. I pull it up. Friends, listeners, I got a high pass on my thesis. My thesis being the necessity of having, or gosh, the increasing need of incorporating Latin into modern curriculum for English learners, for collaboration, both cross curricular as well as vertical collaboration, and then also increasing literacy. So that was kind of the big thing, of course, a focus on Latin. Friends, listeners, not only did I get a high pass, I got a perfect score. And then some Fast and Furious going on out in my neighborhood here. I got an email from the professor that says, "Hi, Stella. I want to personally reach out to thank you for an incredibly well written, comprehensive exam paper. You scored a 40 out of 40, which, out of the 60 students that I've taught in this course across 3 sections, places you at the very top. Before this class, I had only ever graded 3 40 out of 40 comp exam papers. Your paper was something I would expect to see from a PhD student that was immersing themselves in a specific educational topic. In other words, your talent for high quality writing was truly evident. Congratulations on this impressive feat. All the best, Tyler." So, lots of people to thank. I have the Romans to thank. I have Harry to thank for giving me some criticism, constructive criticism on my paper as well. And Tom Panarese to thank for looking over my abstract and asking just out of context, is this interesting to you? And my partner Carly to thank because we had to switch papers a couple times. And yeah. Oh, and then I guess my English teachers and even this podcast, because I think this podcast has made me a better thinker and a better writer. So I'm not finished though. That class is still ongoing. I think it finishes on the 2nd, but yeah, I'm just happy and relieved and still floored and flabbergasted. I think all the F words when it comes to getting a 40 out of 40. So, okay, enough from me. The professor, she's not going to like how long this went. I don't know how long it's gone, but I'm so sorry. So let's go on to the review. So this is what I'm talking about. This is yet another epilogue, which I do mourn the fact that Josh is not here. I didn't know it at the time until I started reading. And just in terms of time crunches, I couldn't really reach out and invite him back on. But we're actually going to see more personally what it has been like and how it's going. And I think how little tidbits maybe of how it will go in the future for Robin and Cassandra. So it's a 4-issue little crossover between the two of them. Fresh Blood is the name of it. And I will screen share these issues, but I do want to say I am not going to like really get into it. Babs is not in any of these. And I honestly could have skipped over them, but I think that it is an important, there are some important things that I do want to talk about. So, because I said, hey, I'm not going to dive into it, I think you should already know that I'm just going to give publisher synopsis for what goes on here and then just a couple points that I will bring up. So, this is first off, Robin 132. Fresh Blood Part 1, Too Many Ghosts. Writer Bill Willingham, artist Damian Scott, back again, and color Sky Major. The synopsis from the publisher. Robin is coping with crippling personal losses, and how he deals with these heartaches will send him in an unexpected direction, right into the path of the stone-fisted Batgirl. Okay, so nice little cover here. I was gonna ask like, what is Cass doing? But it's a fine cover, I would say. So I would say that this funeral is one of the big points just that I want to talk about in this particular issue. this interaction with Bruce and then setting up for Tim to leave for Bloodhaven. So, of course, in the epilogue that I did with Josh, there is the POV really is focusing on Bruce and how he is managing. And while Bruce does talk about Tim a little bit, it's really only here that we get to see how Tim is feeling. Tim is pretty far away. You can see him far back by the trees and away from the other mourners. And Tim says that he is just not fit for company, and he says, well, you seem to be doing okay, which I don't know that necessarily Bruce is saying anything, if he's doing a good job. I know he's trying, but I feel like he's failing with what he is saying here. And we see Tim just bullet points seeing what we got. His dad is dead, Darla is dead, and then of course Stephanie. So he's really taken a lot of losses. And Bruce calls him son, and tries to comfort him physically with his hand on his shoulder, and Tim pulls away from that. So Tim really doubles down and is telling Bruce he is not going to become like him, and just someone who is very vengeful and grim, and turning that mourning into a desire for vengeance. And he's kind of holding on to that grief, and saying that that is what makes us human. And now here it is that he is leaving, right? There are too many ghosts in Gotham these days. So he is going somewhere else. And of course, Dick's territory is open and without protection. So that's kind of a good idea of where he can go. And then also Dana, his stepmother, is in bad shape, I guess, because of this crippling grief. And kind of uses Bruce and Bruce's money to get her into a specific care facility. So we just see kind of their interaction there. Bruce is trying, but it maybe not the best way or best angle. Tim, I think we really start to see in this particular storyline that he does not want the mantle of Batman, and he's kind of pulling away maybe from what Batman represents and some of his philosophies. We'll see that later in some discussions and arguments between Tim and Cass, and then why he is going to Bloodhaven. So then we get to an interesting, because he just said this, right? That I'm not going to become Batman. But then he ends up taking on tactics and mannerisms of Batman. So he decides to use somebody. You work for me now. I own you body and soul. And he wants to put this guy back in the field and report to him. And Alfred is rightfully worried physically. I mean, if you just look at that bottom panel where he's in front of the computer and his hands are in front of him, and he's got, like, that's a very Batman looking pose right there. And Alfred is kind of like, this is kind of dangerous for that guy that you've got there. And Ron's like, oh, it's a risk, sure, but Ronald chose his life. I just put his depredations to good use. I'm like, woo! Yeah, Alfred says small comfort for him if he's discovered. And yeah, he's pretty callous, as Alfred points out. And Alfred will later point all of this out to Batman as well and say that he's quite worried. So maybe some hypocrisy there, just that Tim wants to be away from Batman and not be Batman, but he is in a way becoming Batman. So I think he may disagree with some of these tactics, but maybe he also realizes that it's the way to get the job done. We do see Shriek or Shrike again, and he wants to be with fighting Nightwing, but he'll go second best. And this is where Cass will show up in the end to kind of stop that killing blow. I will say there was one moment, and Josh had mentioned this, but I think Josh wasn't sure when this happened. So he mentions the rumors about Blockbuster still being alive, and Tim wonders if they should tell Dick he's off the hook. And then Alfred gives him a dirty look. And Tim says, oh, right. That's one of the things I'm supposed to pretend I don't know, which is interesting. I do wonder, I think I'll ask that question later, but this is weird that Alfred would give him a dirty look about this and maybe not say, yeah, we should tell Dick that he's off the hook, because Dick is going through some major issues over this death. But maybe they're just trying to wait to see if this rumor is true, which it would have been a bad idea to tell Dick. And then, well, we find out in the end that it is, in fact, just a rumor. So that was 132. And now we move on to Batgirl 58 Fresh Blood Part 2 Following Footsteps. Writer Anderson Gabrick, penciler Ale Garza, and inker Jesse Delberdane, colorist Wildstorm FX. Cassandra teams up with Robin to pick up the pieces from the events of War Games. But can these crime-fighting teens stop the lethal blaze of Nightwing's arch nemesis, Shrike or Shriek? So I will say it's interesting that Cass begins an audio journal. Now, she does say it is like Batman, but one can't help but remember spoilers war journals as well. It's an interesting perspective. Later on, she will talk about Cinderella because her new home is Bloodhaven. We'll find out why she's here. And Nightwing once called it Gotham's wicked little stepsister. So she didn't know what that story was. And then Nightwing acted out and told her the whole story. And she had an interesting perspective. She said, I still don't quite understand. Her stepmother and sisters are called wicked, but her father's the real villain. He let them hurt her and he isn't punished for it. So I like different perspectives. I find that I have them frequently, especially in class, and a couple of my classmates have noted, like, I like how you find different things that we haven't noticed before. I'm like, well, that's usually a weakness of mine. So I appreciate this. But I do wonder how all of this makes sense when typically the father is dead in this story. This is the reason why and how the sisters are, well, I shouldn't say why, but it's definitely how they're able to be so mean and wicked to Cinderella because there's no one there protecting her. She's all alone and they're kind of resentful of her presence. So I don't know if the writer does not know this, and there was just a mix up there, or I guess inside the story, did Dick not know that Cinderella's father is gone? So it's kind of weird for Cassandra to blame the father when the father is dead because he couldn't really do anything. But otherwise, yeah, for sure, I would say that the father would play a part when he could have prevented it. And this is actually, as you'll see in my literature recommendations, I read Page Boy by Elliot Page, and that's something that Elliot goes through because part of the time that he spends once his parents are divorced with his father, the stepmother is abusive, not physically, but definitely mentally abusive. And the father kind of heaps on and doesn't protect him. So that's a very similar thing that's happening here. But again, Cinderella's father is dead. Okay. Yes, I do wonder why this page was necessary. And as you know, people that I'm friends with on Twitter send me Dana from Robotech in the shower all the time to get my goat. I mean, this is just like unnecessary. I don't need to see it. It's great that she had a shower, but Cassandra is just one of the people that I think does not and does not need to and should not maybe be sexualized because I just don't think it's a good idea. I just don't think it's her character either. Okay. There is a moment where aha, okay. So after and I think this is a shipping moment between the two of them where sorry, I was reading my notes. Okay. So during this stitching scene, I think that this might be a piece of evidence that the Tim and Cass shippers use. So here you can go. Maybe. I mean, if you took the word bubbles out, probably. We've seen Barbara certainly heal Dick. And then that usually resulted in some smoochy smoochy. So, why not? So Cass is stitching Tim up and then she tells him how she came to be there. And it's definitely two reasons. So it's a way to look out for Tim because Batman asked her to in a way. And it's also a way to look out for Bloodhaven since it has no protector besides Tim. I will say, looking at this art, I did talk to Donovan. I was like, "Do you like this little crossover, especially Batgirl 59?" And he said, "Is that the one where they made Tim look like Robin from the Teen Titans animated series?" And I was like, "Yeah, I kind of see like some Akira characters here, though, just with the large forehead and everything. It's definitely someone out of Akira." But I will say, Donovan, that Batman does, in fact, criticize Cassandra for her lack of literacy. Okay. So I just want to point that out. But she is going to start to work on it. So I am happy to say that she does begin practicing some reading in this particular story art. In that conversation, as well as conversations to follow with Batman, with Tim, we do see that Cassandra may be the first in line as Batman's successor. I think that that is something that Cassandra would like. I think as Batman examines all of his options, and I think he might have had an initial first, but I think a lot of people are looking at what he is like now, what this journey and this mission has done to him, and they're starting to die off, figuratively, and like back away from that. That Cassandra may be his number one at this particular point. So they do hang out. Look, books, books with Cass. She's touching them, and then she starts to read. She has all these books around them. Now, I don't know what she is. Does that say Dickens? Oh my gosh. She's starting with A Tale of Two Cities. Now, listen, any book for the most part, I think is great. Great that somebody is reading. But maybe don't start with Charles Dickens. But this is unfortunate because she doesn't have anyone to guide her, which Barbara did that to herself to a certain extent. But I wish Tim would kind of be that person as well. But maybe that's not just his role to play in this one. And then they have a meeting with the cops, which is very interesting. That whole scene, I found it. Yeah, she likes to watch, as Tim says, and then there is some hostility from Cass, which I was actually pretty surprised to see, just from Cass towards Amy, that they're holding something back, and then they stepping right up to each other. Yeah, it just seems a little, she's going in a little too hot, something that I was not really used to from that character. As well as Amy being more intense. Amy is kind of like a Renee Montoya intensity here rather than what I know, but it's also a bad situation in Bloodhaven. So perhaps it's just they're doubling down and they're ready to go. So I think that's mostly what I have. Um, they're going to start to infiltrate and figure out what's going on with this blockbuster. And then we end with that particular scene. And then we move on to part 3, which is the auction. Robin 133, writer Bill Willingham, artist Damian Scott, colors Guy Major. Someone is making a major play to fill the power vacuum in Bloodhaven, but who? Shriek? Brutale? Or is Blockbuster somehow still pulling the strings? So it is mentioned again right on the first page, right? My first thought is, oh boy, Dick's off the hook. He doesn't have the man's blood on his hands. Yeah, I'm not supposed to know about that particular drama. But Bats and Nightwing shouldn't let a teenaged Uber detective hang around if they don't want me finding out things they'd rather to keep hidden. So because it's mentioned again right here, I will now ask, why shouldn't Tim know that Dick had a part to play in Blockbuster's death? Is it like we don't want someone that idolizes Dick to see Dick's failings? Is it Tim's got enough going on so he doesn't need yet another thing? We want Dick's little dirty secret being kept hidden under the rug. Like what's happening here exactly? Especially given the fact that when Batman keeps things hidden from people, wars start and people die. Okay. So wars start because he didn't tell, spoiler, that he and Matches Malone were one and the same thing. And Stephanie died, and he didn't tell Tim, and Tim didn't get, or well, Stephanie was on the verge of death, I should say. And he didn't, Tim, Batman didn't tell Tim that she was in a bad way. So Tim never had another chance to talk with her. So, like, bad things happen when you are keeping things hidden from intimate friends slash family members slash your partners. I don't know if he is able to fight people like Killer Croc, then I would say that he also can know about this sort of thing. But if you have any thoughts, listeners, as to why you would keep that fact hidden from Tim, please let me know because I'm interested. My reaction to this was, "You, David, Penguin had Blockbuster stuffed and mounted in order to basically have it seem like he's still around and gather everyone, but really Penguin would be behind it all." So kind of the fear factor there, which is a good idea, but it is so macabre. I don't know that I would expect it from Penguin, but maybe I would, just the plan overall that, people may not respect Penguin enough to gather under him, but they will if he's got Blockbuster's backing. And I think the last section just that I want to talk about here is, of course, there's this huge fight. There's a lot of fighting in this particular four-issue storyline, which I will talk about later. But just like if you recall that dream, which I cannot recall the issue number, I think you'll remember it though, where Cass has that dream and different people appear to her in it and like call her a failure and all these sorts of different things. I think Tim pops up and Batman and Babs and Dick, and I think maybe her father as well. Tim has a gas induced. I mean, he does put in his rebreather, but not in the not quick enough. And this, I think, is one of the more powerful scenes that happens in this four-issue little crossover. That all the people that have recently died, which three is a lot, especially if it's your father and your girlfriend and another potential romantic tie that is also a classmate, all coming to him. But the big thing is, by the way, son, if you're wondering whether or not we blame you for our deaths, we do. You bet we do, sweetie. It's all on you. Yeah, we voted. It's unanimous. So I think it's really interesting that both of these characters have had these really big psychological moments of doubts and things that they have thought really bubbling to the surface, potentially subconsciously, and just what that effect is. I won't compare to say like which one is worse. This one's pretty bad. I'll just say I think they're both pretty bad, but especially wearing on someone who has experience such trauma back to back to back, and then you have to revisit it, and your belief that it was all your fault is told, yes, it is, by the very people that you wished you could have saved. And the unfortunate thing is, like, I don't think that it's his fault, but the fact that he was like close to each situation, he has to ask himself that question because he had a part to play in each of, the potential deaths. I think he's farthest away from Stephanie's death, but like his dad obviously being in the hero business of the school, like could he have saved it? It's definitely not. I just want to be clear. It's definitely not Tim's fault. But it's realistic in that, like, well, it's something that people would potentially ask. Okay, I think that was it for that particular issue that I want to talk about. Is there anything else? They get tied up and then they are going to battle royale in the end. So let's get to that battle royale. So here we are, the finale. Batgirl 59, Fresh Blood, Part 4, Settling Up. Writer Anderson Gabrick, penciler Ale Garza, inker Jesse Delperdang, and colorist Wildstorm FX. Batgirl and Robin find themselves in the fight of their lives as they are forced to bust up a bevy of Bloodhaven baddies, including Brutale and the Trigger Twins, but that's nothing compared to their ultimate battle against each other. Okay, so you can see this. Kind of a cool cover. I mean, it gives us some falsehoods in regards to where they're fighting, but you do wonder what's happening between the two of them. Okay, so they decide to have a beatdown. Now, I always wonder in these situations how people have communicated beforehand that all this is going to happen. Tim is the one who ends up winning. Tim also, well, I should say before that. So Tim wins. Steph slows her heart rate to the extent that it seems like she's dead. Then Tim has to double check from Penguin and shoot her. So we've got three kind of big things that go down, and you just wonder when in this story, really in the previous issue when they were tied back to back, were they able to communicate that all this was going to happen? I will say that I really like this issue. I think besides that fact, I would give this high marks, and I think it's the best issue of this little 4-issue crossover. I don't know what fandom thinks about this fight, but I think the fight is well choreographed. Um, I think potentially Cass really is throwing it because it seems like, especially from issue 132 and Batgirl 58, that Tim just doesn't have the fighting chops that Cass does, and because he really is getting worked by Shriek. And I think just one on one, that's not going to go over well. But I like the choreography, and I also like what they're saying because it's really brutal and it's kind of truthful too of what's going on here. The fight that is both physical and verbal, as well as this discussion that will happen later, are just both really well scripted. And you immediately know that there is truth coming from both sides during the fight. And we also see the conflicting ideologies that, between Tim and Steph. We see that Cass's allegiance with Batman, maybe his indoctrination, if we're being honest, as well as how extreme some of his beliefs are. And when you hear opposing viewpoints, you can kind of see that in contrast of like, wow, this is really extreme because Tim's pretty moderate. So if he's saying that that's extreme, then maybe it is. So let's see if I can give you an example during the fight of what I am talking about. I don't want to be him is a big thing. I moved to get away from him and he sends you after me. So I would say that that is true frustration right there. Cass saying you're weak, you don't have what it takes. Now, she would never, to be Batman, she would never say that in that way, but I do think that she doesn't find him to be as skilled as her to a certain extent. I think maybe she might also think he's got to be uh some room for growth if he wants to be Batman. Tim says, "You think you're so special, so you beat Shiva. That doesn't make you better than me, and it won't make you Batman. He isn't who he is because of the power of his fists. You'll never be him. You know that, right? Way down deep, you know." I think that might be another truth because it isn't only the fists, and I think she's aware of that. Um, I think I think literacy is a big section of her life that she does need to work on, and this is not just coming from someone who, has a literacy, like, a little sub-focus in my master's and someone who loves to read, but the fact that Batman is reading a lot at his supercomputer, dossiers and things like that, and reading up on his opponents and figuring out maps and things like, that's definitely something that she needs to know, as well as just, I think, general education would be great. Because the fighting, she's not like a master, right? She's like a 99 out of a 100, but, yeah, she definitely has other things that she needs to work on. So, of course, this was all a ruse, but I'm also interested in there's just lots of fighting. In this, oh, maybe this is the Stitch scene. So it's 2 Stitch scenes. Now, this is lovely just because it's a nice little parallel. First, Cass stitches Tim up. I don't know where she learned how to stitch, but she did. And then Tim learns how to, or sorry, stitches Cass up. So maybe this is the other one where people might pull this as a reason for some shipping. This is also where we see the two for flinching backstory for Cassandra, and it's gonna sound really weird, but it's one of my favorite backstories for Cassandra. Not because of how sick it is, but I just think you can almost wrap up who she is just from that anecdote. Just looking at that image, just the fact that this is how she was raised and who she has become, and also just not fully understand other people outside of her, not fully understanding who she is, and kind of underestimating her, and she's still a bit of an enigma. So I just think that anecdote really provides a lot of information about her. So, yes, that's how he learns, how'd you flinch? How'd you not flinch, basically? Like, I don't know how you do it. And frankly, when he says, I don't know how you do it, I'm still thinking, if you didn't know how she did it or how she's gonna do it, then why'd you do it? How'd you plan this? Like, that's the big question mark, is just when did you communicate this? And you were sure that if you didn't communicate it, you were sure that she was going to be okay. So they have this heart to heart. Stephanie's name kind of triggers a couple things there. Cass says, "It felt good, didn't it?" What did? Beating me. I didn't beat you. It was rigged, remember? No, I meant beating me. It's okay. Tim says, "No, it's not okay. It's not okay to feel good about hurting someone else." Cass says, "Why not if it's justified?" Um, Tim, violence is a tool. Tool, you called me that, and you meant it. You meant a lot of what you said. I'm sorry, but yes, I did. You might not want to be Batman to take over for him when he's done, but I do. It's the only thing I've ever wanted to be. Is that wrong? That's not what Tim's saying. He says, look, Batman's mission, his unrelenting devotion to protecting and saving innocent lives is a heroic ideal, but it's just that, an ideal, something to live up to, strive for. It's not reality. The reality is we all fall short of it, no matter how hard we try, even him. Cass says, but all we can do is try. Yes, exactly. But we can't try to force reality to conform to our ideal. That's where he went wrong in the gang war. He went too far, and Cass says, no, he didn't go far enough. If he'd just taken control right away, no way. He should have cooperated with the police, shared his information with them. They're the law, not him. Cass says, because of the law, Penguin is still out there. Tim says, because of the law, the rights of innocent citizens are protected. Look, we could go on like this forever. So, right now, let's just agree to disagree. So, through that fight, again, through that discussion right there, we just see these two different sides, and these conflicting ideologies. And yes, I did use indoctrination because I think she idolizes Batman so much that he can do no wrong. And she thinks, yeah, more control, more OMAC. I don't know, brother eye, all of that stuff. And Tim's like, no, like, look at what happened. And, Tim, I think way back, maybe he was never like this. I think to a certain extent, every member in the Bat family, to a certain extent, has had a moment of realization that the Batman that they initially saw is not, kind of the Batman that he really is, and that they were putting him on a pedestal and that he kind of goes too far. I think there's always this aha moment. And Tim's very smart, so I think he's always been trying to speak some truths to Batman. I think War Games for him, in my opinion, I'm obviously not an expert on Tim, but in my opinion, I think this is very much a big breaking point. And like, this is not, I don't fully believe in kind of what he's doing. I believe in the mission, but not how he is trying to accomplish it. There is also a situation or a scene where Cass wants to continue to beat Penguin up some more and doesn't really care when Tim mentions that they've broken so many laws already. And that was a startling scene for me, just that like unnecessary violence. I wasn't sure exactly where that's coming from. When she says, why is it bad to feel good about hurting somebody if it's justified? I'm like, who is this? Why do you think that that's okay? Yeah, I don't know exactly where that's coming from. I mean, compare this Cassandra to the Cassandra of No One Dies Tonight. There are some conflicting characterizations here, I would say. So I don't think that this is the Cassandra that we've been reading for tens of issues. But if we are going with this, and this is the Cassandra we're looking at right now. So in story, I will say that this is, pretty problematic. Like she's very much on either the left or the right of the spectrum there, the vigilante spectrum. And then Tim is the opposite side, but kind of, I would say, in the middle or more of a moderate. I would say that, I mean, I think it's a really interesting discussion, to be sure, but I'm definitely also on the side of Tim, I think, between the two of them. But we end pretty well, right? So I would say that this is a pretty good epilogue to War Games starring Tim and Cass. So I thought all we were going to get was Bruce's perspective, and this was nice to have this. A lot of the time, I would say, was spent, a lot of page count was spent with fights, which, it's a comic, but I think the best stuff was honestly in the character moments and the discussions, just where we can see where their heads and their hearts are, how they're coping, what their plans are for the future, etc. And just like a Republican and a Democrat in a make believe world, they walk away with different plans, but know that they complement each other and can work together. So I think maybe overall I'd give it maybe like an 8 out of 10 philosophical discussions. And yeah, 59 high marks, I would say. I just wonder when they were able to plan that whole fight out. And of course, you do. It's like the superhero shtick of, oh, we're going to have a fight between friends. Some people may find that annoying, but I think what is talked about in that particular discussion, as well as the choreography itself, was pretty interesting. So I still recommend it. And I actually did not have any listener emails. So this is it for this particular part. When I come back, I'm going to cover some, I was going to say some modern quickies. No, it's been a long time. I don't know how many months, at least 4 months since I've read Nightwing. So I definitely need to get back into that, but it's not going to be this episode. So when I come back, I'm going to do a full review of Birds of Prey, Volume 5, Number 3. But first, Zayas' Radio Hour featuring Kyoto by Phoebe Bridgers. See you soon.